Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Chris. I'm joined this week by my brother Adam.
Hello.
We're not joined by Eric this week. He's actually after traveling abroad. He's going there and back again. But when he comes back, I'm sure he'll join in on further discussions. But he did record something that we're going to play later on because this week we are back in the room to talk about The Rings of Power, the new Lord of the Rings show on Amazon Prime, or at least the premiere, the first two episodes, which have launched over the last weekend. And we got to check it out. We were kind of eagerly awaiting this show, curious about how it would turn out. And now we'll finally get to share our thoughts on the premiere, at least. One thing I would like to say is that as this show progresses, we're not going to be doing like an episode every week for every episode. So when we revisit this, it'll probably be when the whole thing has culminated, and we'll be able to give our full kind of spoiler thoughts on everything. So this is just to talk about basically first impressions of the show based on the first two episodes. But that being said, to do that, we will be talking spoilers about those first two episodes. So we can't spoil the show on you because we haven't seen the show. But if you haven't jumped in yet and you've held off, then we probably would end up spoiling the events of just those first two episodes and some of the setup. So if you haven't got around to seeing it yet, fair spoiler warning. Before you listen to us, maybe go check them out and then come back. Plus, it'll give you greater context into what we're jumping into. But if you have seen it, then welcome to the discussion, and we'd love to hear from you guys too. So if you're watching us on YouTube, jump down in the comments, share your thoughts on the Rings of Power and any of the things that we bring up, whether you agree with us, disagree with us. And if you enjoy this discussion, why not give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell for all future content. If you guys listen to us on audio platforms, then you can also touch base on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Brothers Take, again, to give your take on the Rings of Power. But without further ado, let's jump into it.
The Rings of Power.
The Rings of Power. It began with the forging of the Great Rings. Listen, just to kick us off then, maybe we should give a little bit, because this could be someone's first time ever listening to us. Let's give a little bit of background info into where we're coming from in terms of this show. Like, how much anticipation did we have leading into it? How much do we even know about Tolkien? Like, who's this Tolkien guy, you know?
Heard he's wrote a few books.
I heard he's liked somewhat. So
a bit of a following.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself part of that following?
I would indeed consider myself a fan of the old works of Tolkien. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Would I consider myself an expert? Hell no. Absolutely not. Not a scholar, as some people claim to be on the internets. And I wouldn't know the ins and outs. So I'm not as like there's a level of like being precious with the material, but that's with every fandom, right? Even if you're a fan of the Marvel stuff, like you don't want them to stray too far off. But let's face it, the MCU is not actually following the comics.
Yeah.
You know, they've got a bit of creative license with it.
Absolutely.
So my understanding of like going into Rings of Power would be that kind of element to it. It's like there will be surprises and familiarities, but not like a word for word adaptation.
Yeah.
And that was like me going into it. But getting into like, I was introduced to the world of Tolkien through the New Line Peter Jackson movies, right? So those films, that to me, that's always going to be my interpretation of Middle Earth. To some degree, like some people might say that kind of taints your vision of Middle Earth. So now that when I read the books, those are the interpretations I see now when I read the books. People before those movies probably really were dreading those films coming out because of that. It would taint the vision of the works.
Yeah,
we're seeing that being repeated a little bit here. But if it wasn't for those movies, I probably never would have discovered The Lord of the Rings, if I'm going to be honest. So that was my introduction. Then it was like getting into things like the video games, PS2, like Two Towers, Return of the King, Battle for Middle-earth on PC,
yeah.
The Third Age.
Don't forget it, guys. Don't forget it. When's it getting a remake?
Yeah,
with the FF7 battle system. Yeah.
Or would the Final Fantasy 15 system work? Maybe.
Maybe it would.
Maybe
Maybe
it
it
would.
would, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But I'd like to be able to manually switch between that's a different topic. Sorry, sorry.
Different topic. Different topic. Yeah. And then it was, of course, it was the kind of Battle Games and Middle Earth issues, which are kind of behind me here. It's like all fucking 91 issues of the Games Workshop Warhammer stuff, which to this day I still play. So yeah, the world of Tolkien has always been a major part. It was like themes of that at my wedding. My wedding
Yeah.
ring has Elvish on it, so it's plays a huge role. I don't
You're a
I don't think
casual fan, I
I
guess.
don't think I go a day without quoting something from either the movies or the books. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I am
Totally.
a fan, but I'm certainly not a scholar. There'd be stuff even in these two episodes where I wouldn't be totally familiar with. But
Hmm.
for me, it's like, okay, this makes me want to delve back into the books again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing. I mean, a lot of people when they're making something that's based on something, like they always toe that line between like, wanting to do something kind of new, wanting to honor the material, but then also wanting to introduce it to new fans. And that is
Yeah.
certainly what I suppose us growing up in the same household, we're often introduced to the same things at the same time. And the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies did exactly that, introduced me to the Lord of the Rings. And to this day, the greatest movies ever made. I I mean, I hope one day someone will make a better movie, only because that would be an even greater experience. But I doubt it, because it just seems to be like a perfect storm at a perfect time, and also a turning point between uh between the world of practical filmmaking and just this new evolution of technology that could
Mm-hmm.
help enhance, but it wasn't yet the reliant force, you know what I mean, that it is now.
But it was
And
also like it's like what? It's like an indie team with like a Hollywood budget.
yeah, and there's always something fucking special about that, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. Sometimes there's something, and it always reminds me of, I do bring up those comparisons. It always reminds me of what is probably the second greatest movie trilogy of all time, the Star Wars trilogy. But when I think about, like, Peter Jackson reminds me of George Lucas in that sense, in that if you look at his previous filmography, it's like, yeah, there was people in the kind of artsy film world that were kind of like, oh, I kind of like this guy's work, but he wasn't like a big name or anything like that.
Mm.
And then he comes along with this idea, and like, some of the people are passionate about it, but some people are like, that's not gonna fucking work. You know what I mean? But their love and their passion for it is what turns it into just this thing that changes cinema. And both those things change cinema. Like, after Star
100%. Yeah.
Wars,
Yeah.
everything tried to be Star Wars. And after Lord of the Rings, I mean, how many movies had these huge battle sequences, even to the point where it's like, that has nothing to do with the storyline.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was just,
basically every kind of middle-aged base movie had to have some sort of crazy big battle now at the end.
yeah, and a siege tower and stuff, and it's like, just throw it in there. Why not?
Yeah. You took the Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
100%, yeah.
Where it's like, that's not even like the intrigue of that movie. If you go back and watch it, there's actually
Not at
way more
all.
interesting themes in that movie, and battle is not it. And that's how
Yeah,
they
yeah.
sold it to you. And it was because
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, I hated that movie. I was like, this is boring as fuck. Because I thought I was going to watch the big Lord of the Rings kind of movie. But yeah, so I mean, that was the kind of interest and the appeal. And then I read The Hobbit. The Hobbit is still my favorite book, mainly because of the way it's paced. Like, it's just fun adventure the whole way through. And I love the Hobbit graphic novel. That's fucking gorgeous. But I think as well, something you were saying about that, maybe like the New Line Peter Jackson movie trilogy can kind of taint your view on what Middle Earth is. But at the same time, he used a lot of the designs that concept artists for years basically agreed this is what certain stuff looks like.
Yeah.
And like, it cropped, even like you watch the old Bakshi movie, right? And there's stuff in that looks like it. The graphic novel I was talking about of The Hobbit looks like it. There's a certain like agreement, I think, on some things. Obviously, there's variant interpretations, but with some things, it's like there is an agreement that this is what Gandalf looks like, and there's no
Yes.
getting
Yeah.
past that. This is what a Hobbit home looks like, and this is what Hobbiton looks like. And because he leaned into because Jackson leaned into those years of art that came up. I think then when it happened on screen, I mean, for me it was like, just the first time, so I just had to take it out. That's what it looks like because that's my
Yeah,
first
yeah.
experience. But I feel like a lot of people took it well because they were like, "That is, that is what it
Actually, what it
looks like."
looks like.
Yeah, yeah, because they had seen it for years. It's not like he was the first to do it.
No,
He
yeah, yeah,
just honored the work of interpreters for years,
yeah.
and he put his original spin on lots of stuff for sure. I'm not taking away from that, but so then yeah, and then look, getting toys growing up, playing the video games and all that stuff. So yeah, big fan, mainly because of the movies though. I have to kind of tribute credit to that. And
Yeah.
then I dived into the written works, and I remember doing a project on J.R. Tolkien in primary school and wanting to be an author after that, and that didn't happen. But in primary school, I liked to write stories a lot. In secondary school, not so much because it became very much. You get teachers telling you it's like, stop writing stupid stories, and then kind
Yeah.
of disheartens you to write anything at all. So, so yeah, huge fan of Lord of the Rings. Cautiously optimistic about this show leading up to it. I remember when they first bought it, I thought
Mm-hmm.
it was going to be a remake in the form of a show
Oh.
of the Lord of the Rings. I thought it was going to be Frodo, Sam. I thought because they were going to do a show, what was going to differentiate it from the movies was there was nothing from the books they had to leave out. We were going to see Tom Bombadil, the
Oh, yes. Okay.
Barrowitz, Old Man Willow. Everything is going to be in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to be the talking point or the difficult point would be the people talking about, it's like, is that my Sam, or is that my, is, who's this guy playing
It's
Aragorn,
your
and do I like,
Sam.
how are they going to do Gollum, how do you do a different Gollum?
Yeah.
That's, so then when it wasn't that, yeah, like every time they were showing something from it, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the closer we got to it, I was like, now I'm more interested and I'm more intrigued. And now we're here. So we
Yeah.
finally seen the first two episodes. Um, what did you think, first of all, before we jump into any specifics? Just having watched the first two episodes, what are your general thoughts?
General thoughts are still a very much a I don't know,
Right.
because it's like there's things in here that are just really good and beautiful. But then there's also things where I think most of my issues. I think it's surprising seeing the Discord online. It's actually pretty funny. It still seems to be caught up in whether it's the cast diversity or whether or
Mm,
not they're actually following the stories in the books, or they're getting things. They have like they're doing things that are like a little bit differently or leaving things out and stuff. And I'm just like, that's really honestly, that's not even the issue. That's not at all the issue. I think for me, the biggest thing that I'm kind of struggling with is the editing. I think the editing is not great for these two episodes
right.
in particular.
Do you mean like the placement of scenes? Like the order in which things happen?
Yeah, things like that, as well
Mm,
as when they decide to cut to go to another one, like not
yep.
letting things, not giving them maybe enough time. I think perhaps some of this actually could have been spread out maybe over 3 episodes, maybe, because there's certain things that I think maybe happen too quickly,
I
and then
agree with that.
we're
Yeah.
off again.
Yeah.
So
Some things are
I,
too, but and then alternatively, some things are too slow.
yeah, yeah. So
Yep.
I think the editing is, I would love, you know, not to get too far into like speculation or anything going forward, but if there was one takeaway I'd like for like a season two, because I imagine they're going to have the same editors for season one, would be to get different editors, because I think the directing and stuff like that seems to be fine. Actually, the some of the camera work is actually okay for the most part. I think cinematography maybe could be improved, but I think the editing is the bit where it's really bringing it down for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think it's okay.
Mm.
I actually had a chat with Danny last night, Danny Cunningham. Um, just he just rang me up and he was like, "Well, he was like, have you watched it yet?" And then rang me up. Well, he was like, "Well, what do you think?" And it's fun. Like nearly everyone I'm talking to, though, like I've seen some positivity online, and then I've seen some fucking vitriol online. But most of the people I've actually spoken to, who are fans of the material and stuff, kind of have the same reaction, which is it's okay. Like I don't hate it,
Hmm.
but I don't love it.
Hmm.
And I personally feel the show is kind of missing a hook.
Yeah,
So, like, in general show writing terms, like when that episode ended, I wasn't itching for the next one, and I can happily wait.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's not a good thing. I think I should be itching for that next episode. Now, I don't know if it's that the show doesn't have a hook or that it's not emphasizing its hook. Like, there's some stuff
Mm.
in there that's intriguing, but I think that they haven't maybe put that at the forefront to make you really want to know, well, what's going to happen next, or what did that mean.
I think oddly enough, because we are just saying about
So,
how, for me, the obviously the Peter Jackson movies introduced me to the world of Tolkien, and that made me want to explore it more.
mhm,
And a lot of the gatekeeping for that was leading up to this season was that people were afraid that this would taint the vision of Tolkien for new fans, right? That
right.
was a lot of the you know the anger against this show. Um, but oddly enough, this show I don't know if this show is enough so far for someone who's never, let's say, they never heard of the Lord of the Rings
Yeah,
and they don't know anything about the material. I think this show it's really leaning on the fact that you would know the stuff.
yeah, I think so.
It doesn't
Definitely.
do
Otherwise, I think you would be like, what the fuck are they talking
yeah,
about?
what is going on?
Like, I mean, it's not like I mean, there's a bit of a prologue sequence, but it's not like it's even as detailed as the prologue to the Fellowship of the Ring or anything.
No.
I will say, sorry, I think the show, it sounded like I just had negatives out. The show is beautiful. I think it's beautifully shot, and the
Yeah.
sets are fucking incredible. And like just some of the visuals, I think are stunning. So in that sense, I'm like well impressed. And maybe it should just be David Attenborough like voicing over a
Yeah.
documentary of Middle
Just
Earth, and maybe that would be
imagine
just
that. Imagine that
beautiful.
like
And I'd
nature
also
program.
love to watch. I'd say they'd be mad not to do this as well because of the fame of the behind the scenes to the Lord of the Rings. I think Amazon Prime should make a separate making of series
Mm.
that maybe happens in between seasons that people see how was season one made or whatever. And I think that'll be fucking great. I actually think the behind the scenes,
It'd be
like crew
better than the
work and
show.
everything, I so far. So I think that's amazing, and I think a lot of the performances are pretty strong.
Yep.
Some of them not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then also I do question. I have a question, and I maybe you have an answer. I don't know. Is the show intended to be a prequel to the movies, or like as in it's the same universe, or is it a just an adaptation of like their own version of the Second Age?
I think Amazon has done a fucking terrible job clearing the air of that message because online there's constant comparisons to the Peter Jackson things. I've seen people even go, "Oh, is that a hint at something that happens in such and such a movie?"
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this has any connection whatsoever to the New Line Cinema movies
Okay.
at all. I think this is its own adaptation. It doesn't help the fact that they have licensed New Line Cinema designs for
Mm-hmm.
many of what we've seen so far.
Yes.
But like you said, it's probably just because they have John Howe as a concept artist for the show. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think they have anyone else. I think he's the only one.
Yeah, yeah.
And he has very specific designs, and so far it's his designs that are showing up in the show. But a lot of them would now be owned, I guess, by New Line. So in order to get his designs back, they would have had to have paid New Line a license. And I
Yeah.
think that's why we're seeing them. I don't think it's well, to some degree it's like, well, let's face it, we can't do it much better than that, so let's just use that. But I think it's its own thing. Yeah.
It's strange to me then if it's not a prequel to the movies
Yeah.
because there's so many shots in it that are, well, I mean, it could be that it's just look, it's honoring the movies as well as the books, but like, I mean, there's so many shots of Morfydd Clark's eyes,
Yeah.
that are specifically done to remind you of Kate Blanchett's Galadriel.
Mm.
Um, little things like that throughout. But anyway, so some of the events of episode 1 then, um,
Episode 1.
and then grab you or stand out to you in terms of
Yes.
likes and dislikes. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a actual jaw-dropping kind of reaction to in the prologue
Was it the
sequence.
battle scene?
Yes,
Yes, me too.
because I'm like, okay, so the rest of the 2 episodes is like, okay, yeah, whatever. But in my head now, I'm like, fuck me, like I know we're leading to the Battle of the Last Lines. Like
Yeah.
they literally just gave us a taste of what is kind of to come.
Was it when
Essentially,
that arrow hit?
no, actually, it was the. I don't know whether it was. It looked like a fell beast, or if it was supposed to be a
Oh,
dragon.
sure.
But
Yeah, yeah.
but that killing the eagle and watching the eagle fall and crash and then into the battle, like, is just
And flames everywhere.
wow.
And
It's like,
yeah, that's a scene I wish was
honestly,
longer.
well, that's a scene that scene should have been the Battle of the Five Armies in terms of like how that should have looked.
Yeah, yeah. And the
You know,
color
the
grading
tone
on
of
it and
it.
everything
It
was
was
fucking
just
great.
stunning,
Yeah.
absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like that is what's to come. There's 5 seasons here. That we're going to get way more of that shit,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why I'm like, kind of, all right. Whatever issues I have, okay, so that's something that I love. A lot of the visuals, actually, I think that kind of stuff, the spectacle,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
just absolutely stunning.
Stunning. Yeah, I agree.
The thing where I'm like, I'm really not into this like at all, and hope they just beeline that story arc, is the Harfoots. Everything to do with them, all of it.
All right.
So the Harfoots, but I feel like maybe that's just similar enough to what they did with the Fellowship movie, is like front loading it with the cutesy, whimsical, everything is fine
The calm before
stuff.
the storm, right?
Yeah, because I think that particular battle is a taste of what's to come, and that's what I'm all here about. Like, that's what I want.
Yes, 100%. That was probably my favorite sequence in that episode, and I was, but it was with all the action sequences, they just happened too fast. Like that happened too fast, and then the cave troll or the snow troll when they're up in the mountains, and actually the shots again, the spectacle of it. When they're up in the mountains and the lightning is striking, and you see the fortress whenever the lightning strikes and everything, I was like, that's fucking cool. But then like they get attacked by the snow troll and it throws the ice at them and it looks really realistic. And I was like, that's fucking great. And then Galadriel just kills it, instantly. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would have been a nice opportunity to show off some of the action of the show and start hooking people into, fuck yeah, this show is going to be action packed as well as full of the spectacle, as well as full of the character interactions. But it happened so quick. Like she just kills him instantly that it's like, I think you're trying to say something about her character. Don't think you should. I already see the comments coming. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things. It's like, if it had been anyone else, it would have been totally fine. But for some reason, if it's her, it's just the world's gonna be up in fucking flames. Like, I don't.
I
These
think they could have
your Mary Sue comments, that kind of shit.
I
And I'm
think
like,
I think you're right though. If that was an extended like Balin's tomb sequence,
yeah,
showing the party
fighting this troll.
fighting this troll, there is something about like the kind of flipping off the sword jump thing and then cutting it midair and then just doing this big spinny cool thing. And I say cool as in they think it's cool.
Yeah, cool in italics.
It doesn't. It's reminiscent of like when Legolas does the things. Like, let's face it, none of us, as memeable as it is, none of us actually thought any of the things Legolas did was cool.
Oh, kids did.
No, I never thought him actually sliding down the trunk of an elephant was actually cool.
I know you didn't.
That was my moment where I'm just like,
roll your eyes.
Okay,
yeah. Sure,
I'll accept it what it is because the rest of the movie is badass. But that's just,
I understand.
And then they went to town on him in the Hobbit, like, and that's the side of the elves that I just don't dig.
The
they
kind of
certainly
super ninjas kind of thing.
Yeah, they certainly are superhuman and can do things better than man. But
yeah.
it should still be grounded, especially how far stunt work and fighting choreography has come over the years, this is an opportunity to really show that rather than it just looked like wire work, you know? It
Yeah.
looked like the shot. Remember when in Underworld when Celine jumps and cuts Victor's head?
Yes.
And it's so
Spoilers for that too, huh?
like okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just the way it's done, it's like I can see the wires nearly.
Yeah, it's not real. It's just not real. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
So
believable.
yeah, that was not well done and just ends so quickly. And it was like they just completely dismissed the snow troll. They were so
Yeah.
eager to keep going. That was like a well, hang on a minute. What, what
Yeah.
the hell? What's this thing doing here? You know, like let's
Yeah.
investigate
Yeah.
that.
I love as well. I wish it was a video game actually, because there was like moments where like they're looking around and there's like an orc carcass encased in the rock or whatever. It looked fucking
So cool,
amazing.
so cool.
And
Yeah.
I was like, man, I just want to explore this cave, like every little inch of it, and just immerse myself in what's going on. It was similar visuals that I thought were fucking amazing. Um, when Galadriel and Elrond are talking in Lindon,
Mm,
and you have the trees, and you have carved into the trees and this is how to do like elven graves basically, is like a
yeah.
wood sculpture of those that they have lost, and you could see them around. And actually that conversation between the two of them was probably
Is
my other
great.
is great when he's talking about, how many more of these graves basically do you want to make in your quest, why can't you
Yeah.
just drop it, and her talking about, that was brilliant. um but I feel like
I think Elrond actually has probably the best conversations throughout these two
he's
episodes.
he's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, he
I
is good.
was nervous about Elrond, and he's pretty good. Now there's something I will bring up later on that I think, again, only if it's intended to be a prequel to the movies, which it doesn't seem to be. I don't know. If it's intended to be the prequel to the movies, I would have swapped the roles of Elrond and Galadriel. And maybe I'll
Okay.
explain why later, because it kind of feeds into speculation for the future.
Okay.
However, if it's not and if its own thing, then cool, like do what you're doing, you know.
Right.
But if it's intended to be, only because they're not lining up with, it's like they're the opposite
Okay.
of where they end up. You know what I mean?
I have speculation too about how actually it could end up being the characters that we know in the movies.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, no, that conversation was amazing. But I don't think all of the conversations are amazing, and
No.
some of them feel very much like, this is how Tolkien writes, isn't it? He writes like this, right? It's like almost trying too hard to, like, everything is a metaphor and flowery language, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
they don't always have, like, I think they nailed that conversation with Elrond and Galadriel, and I was kind of like immersed in it. But with some of the other conversations, I was just like, oh, like,
Shut up.
shut the fuck up and move on. But yeah, I it's just the reaction I had, unfortunately, where I was just like, this just sounds unnatural and boring, and not unnatural in a I'm transported to that world kind of way, just unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I find it even hard to pinpoint where I'm talking about. Just there was just
I think
moments of it throughout. I think.
Gil-galad, his stuff. I'm not totally convinced. Although he looks very like the guy who ends up being Gil-galad in the Fellowship prologue,
Yes, he
which is
does.
another. It's just so
Yeah,
fucking weird because it's like he looks like him.
he does. He looks very like him. Yeah.
But I'm not mad on his performance so far. Hopefully that becomes, gets better. But his dialogue in particular, I'm just like, what?
Yeah, yeah.
But
I
I
agree
did
with
love
that.
the thing where, like, Elrond's introduction, and he's like writing the speech that Gil-galad will actually end up saying. I
Oh
thought
yeah,
that
and
was,
he's able to mount along with it. Yeah,
yeah,
that
I
is
like
good.
that one. That was a good one.
I also did not appreciate, and maybe sometimes maybe cameras nowadays are too good. I could see the makeup. I could see
Specifically
it
on the Harfoots.
clearly on the faces. Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, but that's it. I actually surprised myself. I quite liked Nori and Poppy of the Harfoots.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I more so in episode 2.
Right.
That's not to say, like, I don't like all the Harfoots or anything. they didn't annoy me as much as I thought they would. Some of them, others
Mm.
did. But Nori and Poppy, I was like, I actually kind of like these two. I like their interactions with each other. I think they've got good chemistry, and I am curious where they're gonna go with those two because it's two
Yeah.
characters that I would have never like in all the marketing. I was paying no attention to them at all. I just
Yeah.
had no interest in that side of the story. And now having seen them, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I kind of want to see where that goes. And I really liked as little as he spoke, I quite liked Arondir, the new elf.
Yeah. He's
His
my favorite so far.
screen presence is, I mean,
Incredible.
that guy's going to be a film star.
100%. You're gonna see him in everything now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
he was great.
We'll get annoyed about him soon enough.
We will.
But yes, and I liked his, yeah, just his so far what we've seen with him. Like he's the only one, apart from Galadriel, I guess, that is eager. Like he's on a mission. Like he's on a quest of some sort.
Yeah,
We don't really
yeah.
know, that hasn't unfolded yet, but yeah, I think his storyline in particular will be a fun one to follow.
Yeah, that's one of the moments where I'm like, and as well, maybe that's how the first episode or that episode. But we'll move on to the second episode. But that's probably where the second episode should have ended, where he gets grabbed.
Yeah,
but it keeps going after that. You know what I mean? I suppose was it the first episode? Oh yeah, I remember. And actually, me and Danny were talking about this. I didn't like this. I don't know if you like this. When Galadriel, she's on the ship to Valinor. It's beautiful. It's angelic. It's kind of holy, and she jumps off the boat, and she's gonna swim for fucking days in the Sundering Seas. I'm like, that's stupid. I don't care who the character is. That is stupid. I honestly thought but there's two ways you could write the story. Either she does not get on the boat, she just refuses to get on. She has a moment of thinking of getting on the boat and then doesn't get on, which is the same thing, except she's not on the boat and jumps off the boat.
Yep.
Or she does go on the boat, she's reluctant about it, and then that sea monster, the worm, attacks the elven boat and strands her, and then she gets stranded with other people. In which case, it's like it cements in her mind that there's work she still has to do here.
Yeah.
Those are two better outcomes than her jumping off the boat.
I don't know if any of them anything to do with her out in the ocean is necessary. Like in many ways, Galadriel feels like she's forced into situations as opposed to her story is naturally taking her there. Now the visual of Valinor, like what's that line? The gray rain curtain opens to reveal a swift sunrise. Yeah. Like the visual of that is just
amazing,
unfucking believable. And some degree, I'm glad we got to see that being brought to screen. It's just so stunning. But 100%, what the fuck? Why would you think that she would be able to swim all the way back to Middle Earth? What the fuck?
Yeah,
like I don't know. Like yes. Elves, I suppose, have some incredible endurance, but like we said, let's take it as though this is your first time, your first introduction to the Lord of the Rings, and you don't actually know much about the elves, and you haven't really shown much about what they are apart from their immortality. That doesn't justify her ability necessarily to be able to swim all the way back to Middle Earth. Even if she would have the ability, you haven't shown that yet. And yes, that's just that was a way to force her to meet Halbrand, as far as I can see.
Yes.
And a way to force them over into Numenor at some point, whether that's in third episode or not.
Yeah. This is exactly it. And I was wondering as well, as even if the elves have that kind of endurance, and they can confidently swim across the oceans, why would they build boats? You know, I'd say, why wouldn't they just take a leisurely swim together, you know, swim to the heavens. I don't know. It was just a scene that it just didn't sit right. It was just like, I get maybe you're trying to play on that metaphor that you set up at the start, which was another. I didn't actually like the way the episode started
No,
with
it was a terrible beginning.
and the other elves bullying Galadriel and her little white paper boat by throwing rocks at it, and then at the end it's like, oh, but it was a metaphor for, there's the ship and there's the meteor, which is the rock, and you're like, oh, I mean, I'm not fucking stupid, like, and I don't know, it's like you set up that metaphor, but you try too hard to set up that metaphor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it didn't
And
have the payoff that they were hoping for, I don't think.
I don't think so. But then the
No.
stranger arrives, and that's cool imagery there. So I suppose that kind of leads us into episode 2. I've seen online the discourse is that a lot of people much prefer episode 2 to episode 1. Did you have
Yeah.
that kind of thought towards it? Because I think I did prefer episode 2 to episode 1. I think I felt like it was moving along quicker and things were happening more. But I'm just wondering, is that a general consensus, or what do you think?
I don't know. I don't know which one I prefer, because I think the imagery of the first episode I much preferred. Like the killing of the trees, and you see the shadow of Morgoth, like the silhouette of Sauron, and then his horde
He
of
looked
orcs.
great.
Like, all of that was what I'm here for, really.
Yeah.
So we got less of that, of course, in episode 2, but yes, I think episode 2 was probably paced way better. It had a much better pacing, so that's probably why people prefer it. But I'm still not totally in it yet. Like there's mystery where I'm like, I'm intrigued to see where this goes, as opposed to I need to see how this goes,
Can I ask which mystery intrigues you the most? Because I feel like people are intrigued by different things.
There's 2 in particular, I think that I'm interested in, and well, actually maybe 3 actually.
Yeah.
The Stranger, obviously.
Yeah.
Because I was so convinced that was Sauron.
And now I'm absolutely
And
not.
now I'm hearing people mention things like it could be the Blue Wizard.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm not wholly confident yet, but I still feel like it's Sauron. I think it hints way more to it being Sauron than it does a Blue Wizard. And I think either way, this is a ruse. This is a ruse.
It is probably. I actually think
Sauron,
we'll get more into
deceiver.
speculation, right? We'll get more into speculation in a little while. But actually, I think it doesn't hint at a Blue Wizard, but I do think it hints at a wizard. Canonically, it would not be correct.
Yeah,
but the imagery around it is far more reminiscent of a different wizard to a Blue Wizard. But we'll talk about that later.
The other mystery would be surrounding Theo
with sword
and Halbrand.
Who
was introduced into the second episode as well, because
Yes.
Halbrand is mentioned to have come from the same village that we saw being attacked, or at least it's implying that it's the same village that was attacked, and he has a little emblem on his necklace that he wants to hide. So there's something there that needs revealing. So it's those 3 that I'm like, okay, see where this goes.
One that has me really intrigued, and I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about it, and maybe it's like it's not supposed to be much of a detail at all, but when the cow was milked and all the black stuff came out,
all right, okay,
to me it hinted at like, and they talked about like the grass being poisoned and stuff, and I just was immediately thinking of like Ungoliant, who like poisoned the land, and things like that. And I was just wondering, is there going to be like more stories of like other parts, like farmers' crops failing and animals getting sick and dying, and like just this sickness that's on the spread that people, it's so subtle at first and people aren't really noticing, and it's something that maybe will directly affect the Harfoots too. And that's like one of those things that if they can pay that off, it will genuinely affect all of the characters who are far away from each other, to the point where there's a common threat. That's not just the threat of war, which is always like a cool one, but it's like, but if there's something else where it's like, if we don't like find the source of this and stop it, everything will die. And that's always an appealing story to me, especially in the genre of fantasy, very reminiscent of like the Dark Crystal and that kind of thing. So I was like, I'm hoping that's not just a little small detail and that actually is something. I do feel like they've planted all these little threads and that they are all going to be related. I mean, it's
Hmm.
obviously related to Sauron. I'm surprised though that the show is very openly like Sauron is out there.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be very much about the rise of Sauron, the first time they ever hear of Sauron, like his coming. I
Yeah,
thought it
well,
was
that
going to
would
be
be
that far back, second age kind of shit.
well, it would have to be first age then if they want to go that far back. You see,
Oh, I
um,
thought it was all Melkor first age and then Sauron second age kind of thing.
no, because
I don't,
Sauron.
I don't mean Sauron when he's at Morgoth's side. I do mean when he's sort of on his own. But what, like, I'm just surprised how many people already know who he is. I was like,
Mm.
why is it in every iteration of anything Middle Earthy, Sauron is always already banished? And but what if the enemy returns? He's always the enemy who will return. And the enemy is still out there, and
It tends to
it's
be that
just
though.
yeah. It's like maybe it's actually not that hard to kick this guy's ass. He's always fucking
He's
banished.
always coming back. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, that's all.
yeah. No, it is like, I mean, they've established that they have already defeated him, but it's just Galadriel is not convinced on that.
She's never convinced on that.
No.
You know,
Oh, she's right
never.
though. She's right.
I suppose we all, another big moment in well, you mentioned Halbrand actually, who
Mm.
comes into it in the second episode, but the worm sequence I thought was fucking cool. I was into that. Could have been
Yeah.
again longer. I think the action sequences could be dragged out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like because it looked very realistic when she's swimming and the tail is coming up behind her and the water splashing and everything. Like it's shot and it's visually really good.
I think it was Weta Digital who did all the obviously the CGI and stuff for it.
Yeah.
And man, they did some work.
Yeah, no, like
Because
that's
the CGI is incredible and it's not overused. And
yeah.
we are back to prosthetic orc, baby. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
That
good.
orc
Looked really good.
looked incredible and scary. Holy fuck. Like the whole, there's a horror aspect to the orcs.
Yeah, I like that.
And that was
I like
really
that.
cool.
I'd lean into that more. I hope they do.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd say they will like they'll treat them, they're monsters, like
because Mordor was scary to me when I was younger,
mm,
particularly in that first movie when it was a little bit more mysterious and they didn't have British accents yet. You know, they weren't all Cockney. But the like the Nazgul were fucking scary. And then the orcs were scary because they didn't really talk and they were just hunched and menacing. And the imagery of Mordor, which was basically just your vision of hell, was fucking scary. And the fact that you're like, these little guys who came from the nicest place ever are going there. As fuck this. And even like the bravest warrior is saying, not with 10,000 men could you do this. Like, this is fucking folly. Unreal. So yeah, I'm glad that they lean into like orcs being really scary and people are afraid of them. I'm looking forward to seeing more of them. But yeah, he looked cool. The prosthetics are cool. The film making to the show is really good. You see.
Oh yeah,
There's just something wrong, and I don't know. I can't even pinpoint exactly.
I think
what
it is the editing, and
yeah, maybe.
And I think as well, I'm not too keen on the score. Actually, there are moments where the score is really good.
Yeah.
Paths of Doom is one of them.
Yeah.
And I think when the meteor was coming down,
that was pretty good. But generally,
apart from that, it's not great. Like Galadriel's theme, I get really fucking annoyed when I hear that. It's just one of those things that, like, every time it comes up, I'm like, it's that theme again.
Yeah.
It doesn't capture, and I think it's as well. It's not gelling with the editing very well. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like the Hobbit movies in that way. The Hobbit movies are not edited well with the score.
Yeah.
They feel forced together a little bit, and I'm getting a sense of that with this. And I think that's what's ultimately wrong with it, because I think there's a lot of good here. I think the acting is actually really good. Some of the dialogue, yeah, okay, but I think if it was edited a little bit differently, that actually might feel a little different.
Yeah.
So I actually do think it's all down to the editing. But there are as well with the costumes aren't fully. there. I don't think.
I
Like
think in
some of them
I think in
are.
some cases, yeah, I think in
Yeah,
some cases they are. In some cases they're great. I think Arondir's armor and stuff, like he looks fantastic, and
Arander's
those
cool.
little
I like
details you
Arander.
can see. Yeah. The only question I had is how the hell does he keep his hair that short? But whatever. But he looks great. But yeah, and then you see some other character, like even Gil-galad's clothing. I remember just looking. There's something about Gil-galad is all off. I don't know what it is.
It's the lack of
this,
sideburns, man. I'm
this
telling
looks
you.
like cosplay or something. It's weird. But you mentioned Khazad-dûm. I think that the Dwarven music was the most like the Middle Earth soundtrack that we've come to know, maybe from Howard Shore.
Yeah.
And I actually thought the dwarves were great. I
The
I think they're
my
fantastic.
favorite dialogue sequence in the whole 2 episodes
Yep.
is Durin and Elrond on the lift.
Yeah.
And
Really, really
Durin
good.
trying to explain to Elrond that time is not just a thing that you don't just show up, right? There's so much important shit happened,
In the
and
time
that
you were gone. Yeah. That was
yeah,
just a
and
blink for him. Like, yeah.
yeah, and I was just like, that is so fucking good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really, really good.
I really
Like this,
enjoyed
this
that.
was a moment that could have been played for laughs, kinda. Like the way it's delivered could have been that, but the way Elrond took it was not that. It's like he
He
started to
took it
realize,
very sincerely. Yeah.
yeah, so well done. That is really good.
And I honestly, at the dinner table and everything, I thought the chemistry there was
Yep.
strong. I thought Durin and Disa were great. I was like sold on it. I was like, I think they've nailed the dwarves here.
Yeah,
I
they're
like then
good.
when Durin goes to talk to his father, and his father's clearly hiding something. Could be the Arkenstone, could be Mithril, whatever shiny thing it is. Um, but even at that moment, it's like we can't trust the elves, and everything was. I thought that I felt really in Middle Earth when we were in Khazad-dûm.
Yeah.
I have
I
to
also
say.
liked Celebrimbor, and I
Oh
liked the
yeah, oh yeah,
dialogue between Elrond and him as well, with
yes,
the hammer and things like that, and talking about the Silmarils.
yeah,
That was really good, but I really, really disliked the way they just walked behind a rock to get to the door of the door of Castle Doom. It's just like it was such a set. It's like this is so a green screen set.
sure,
We're
sure,
absolutely not on location here.
yeah, 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 yeah. There's
There's
a spot where
moments
it's
that
obvious. Yeah,
yeah, there's moments like that where it's like okay,
yeah,
and what? It's just the two of you.
yeah. Come on.
You don't have like I don't know escorts, guardsmen, something.
Anything.
The two you just walked there.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, is there nothing in the wild, even if you're not weary of the dwarves themselves, is there nothing in the wild that could hurt you too? You're
Like a
very
bear.
important elves, you don't seem to even be
The
carrying weapons
Lord of
weapons on you.
Irigion,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's just like rocking up in his dressing gown. Like what the hell?
Yeah, yeah. Come on, guys. Where's the armed guard here? Come on.
But
No, I agree.
that's
That
a
that
moment
that
of.
shot was silly.
But like as well, it's like the with Middle Earth, what makes the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies kind of really great, and in terms of the journey, it's the sweeping shots of nature and seeing them actually walk there.
Yes.
Um,
Nothing
where
happens quickly.
there's none of that happening in either of the 2 episodes. A little bit in the north when they were walking towards
Climbing the
the
mountain, right?
down the
Yeah.
mountain, but apart from that, even the sweeping shots, um, they're overlaced with a map, and it's all
I didn't like that. That just reminded me
not
of
good.
because I know initially people were saying, "Oh, this is going to be Amazon's Game of Thrones," and
Mhm.
anytime they did the map thing, I'm like, "That's a Game of Thrones thing."
That map is
That's
not good. I don't like that map.
yeah, I don't like that map. It
It
doesn't
doesn't
look
look
like the
Middle
Middle Earth
Earth.
map, really. It
No,
doesn't look like the language of like the visual language of Middle Earth, but
and
also,
neither does the little titles of every area
yeah,
you're
yeah,
going
yeah,
to. That
yeah.
little gold. There's just something. It's not right. It's not quite
No, it's not quite there. No, I agree,
the
100%.
text. Yeah, it's
And it should be just the sweeping nature shots. That's enough to tell
that's all
us
you need.
this is the
Yeah.
distance you're traveling. And I don't even know if you need to have the name of the place. I think you could get that from you show the place, and when people mention the name of it, we will like Minas Tirith was given such, we're going to Minas Tirith, and when you arrive, the the screen tells you this is Minas Tirith. Same at Helm's Deep. We're making refuge to Helm's Deep. Helm's Deep. You know what I mean? We're going to Rivendell. Rivendell. The camera always did the intro to the location for you to the
Yeah.
point where you never needed the name on screen. Now, maybe they feel like they're doing too many locations here, and to keep the audience up, they need to. But I think
Yeah.
if they write
I
it
know.
well enough, you will understand where we are. You know what I mean?
I do like the idea of trying to bring in the maps and showing going, especially in the prologue, going from Valinor over to Middle Earth, and then it showed the ship sailing like it was so
Right,
beautiful.
right.
I just don't like the way the map was done. I don't like the actual look of the map.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I do
The
think
overlay.
introducing the map is good because maps play such a huge role in the books anyway. Like
Yeah, yeah,
they're it's a nice way of bringing in some of the artistry that Tolkien would have done.
yeah, yeah.
It's just the way they look, right? It's not the
The execution.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think a lot of our thoughts actually were echoed by Eric, who he's away at the moment, but he watched the first two episodes before he left, and he actually recorded his thoughts on the first two episodes. And here's what he had to say.
Right. So I have watched the first two episodes of The Rings of Power. I mean, of course I have. They're the only two that's released. But anyway, um, really well made. Music is weird. It doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings music. I must admit. I think the Dwarves music was probably the most like Lord of the Ringsy to kind of get you into it. Because, if you're going to be calling it Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, the more it feels like the movies, I suppose, the better. And I think one thing about its designs and stuff like that, sometimes you're looking at it going, yeah, conceptually that looks like something from what a workshop made, and then other times you're looking at it going, this looks very kind of TV showish, which is part of my issue with it is that pacing of it. Now I know it is a TV show and I know it's 5 seasons, but pacing of it is very like, oh, this is a TV show because I suppose in the first two episodes doesn't really build up to a lot, and it's just a lot of like, here's this character and there's that character and there's that character and there's that character, and somewhat there's a story, but really there's just characters happening. I think my favorite part of the whole thing was the very start when Galadriel was doing a narration and there was like a battle sequence in a narration. It's probably my favorite thing of the whole thing. And then seeing the Dwarf Kingdom was probably probably the two parts where I was like, awesome, class, give me more of that. Now, I would still watch more of the show. I'll absolutely watch more of the show because I am definitely intrigued. But at the moment, I'm not like, wow, this is the best thing ever. Oh my god, this is so Lord of the Ringsy. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of improvement, definitely. But I think I'm hopeful at least that they will definitely deliver on that part. I think it will be a very good show, and I think the more they get into it, and the more everyone else kind of gets it, everyone kind of gets into the rhythm of the show as well as they get into the rhythm of the show. And once the big budget, I suppose, is shown, it is you can clearly tell it's a big budget. Some of the designs of the cities and everything is very cool. And hats off to them for actually using like real props and real buildings and very little CGI, and CGI like is again just used for like the icing on the cake of like mountain ranges and backgrounds, because that's what I want to see. I want to see mountains again. They give you that, which is great. So they're the kind of the pros and cons I'd have for it is that I think it needs to kind of speed up a bit, but then I suppose it is 5 seasons, so that's what they have planned for it. So I suppose they can take their time with it. I do like some of the characters. Some of the characters are cool. I wish for the narration that they'd use Kate Blanchett. I miss Kate Blanchett's narration. She was always very good at it. But I'm intrigued by this version of Galadriel. I'm intrigued by some of the characters. The stranger that the Harfoots find intrigues me the most, mainly because I'm not 100% convinced on who that is based on stuff that they have changed with the show. But I'm glad that they do have Celebrimbor in it. I am very much going to look forward to that point. I don't know how much I can say. Like, I don't know if this is a spoiler talk or first impressions. But first impressions is I will keep watching it. It's very well made. I would like it to be a little bit more kind of the Lord of the Rings style music and stuff. I get why they're not using it because it's supposed to be like the early days of all these people and stuff. But yeah. So pros, very well made. Cons, a little bit more Lord of the Ringsy. And also my biggest con is the opening graphic. The sort of directed by this person, produced by this person, music by this person. The actual how that's done with the stones kind of moving and changing symbols. I would have way preferred the fire just roaring through the wood, and that was like the very first image we ever got. Give us that back, or something, or just have the name come up, because that was one of the most. That was awful to me. I really didn't like that because I thought it was so underwhelming that I was like, I'm not pumped to watch this next episode now, which is weird because that's exactly what that sort of thing should do. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion. I definitely keep watching it. All right, bye bye.
So there's a lot of echoing, I think. Like he said similar things to what you said about like the score, that it didn't really gel with him. That it looks beautiful, but that there's something quite not right about the show, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint what that is. And that's a lot of what we were talking about as well. But that he has hopes that it's going to get better. And I mean, I hope it gets better. I really do. Like, I'd like to get to the point where now I can't wait, rather than I'm like, yeah, I can wait. Like, it was okay. I don't feel like I had a horrible time, but I also don't feel like I had the best time ever. It's like I'm content. I'm fine. But I think that's what's bothering me more. I should have a stronger reaction to it. I should either be like, I fucking hate this because it's not like there should be more pressures with Lord of the Rings, or I should be like, oh my god, that was so good. I love Lord of the Rings. And so this indifference is kind of bothering me.
I think you're probably in a healthier position though than most
Maybe.
people's feedback at the moment.
Yeah. Probably like I don't need to see a therapist. But but something he did say was that we haven't brought up yet was he talked about the title sequence.
Yeah.
That really doesn't work for him. What do you think about that?
I agree to. I get where he's coming from with the first reveal where they did it for real, like the piece of wood with the silver text in it.
Yeah,
I would love to see that integrated here as well, because I do think it's that gold text at the end. It's just like, what the hell? It almost looks like a fan movie nearly, the way that's brought up with the little sunshine surrounding it. It's not good. And the marketing the whole time has been the silver text. Where is that in the show?
Well, they used it in the first episode, right? The title was it was basically Skyrim. I actually said that at the time. I said Skyrim. It was a black screen with grey smoke in the background and just the silver writing. And I thought, oh, that's the title sequence. It just does that, and then on we go. And then it was only the second episode had the title sequence with all the moving stones and things.
Yeah.
Right?
So when that came on, I was like, that's fucking interesting. Now, I have seen people like really not digging this at all. The way it's little stones creating the imagery and stuff like that. That's kind of, whether it's the 9 rings or the 2 trees or whatever it's actually creating. But what I loved about it, it's really well done. It must be CGI, I'm assuming. But if that is, that's some crazy particle effects that they're doing on that.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
But it looks like, when you see there's artwork that people do where they use, I don't know whether it's sand, but they use some sort of material, and it's when they put an electric charge to it, or they cause a vibration of some sort, and it creates a certain shape. It, like, everything will just like straight into the shape.
Yeah.
it looks like that, but it also looks like when you put a speaker on its side, right? And if you put a sheet over it and then put beads on that, if you
Yes.
play music, those beads will actually form to the shape of the sound coming from the speaker. And if you change the tune, they'll change again. So here we're seeing a visual representation of the way Arda was created, which was through song from the Vala,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they all made this tune, and then we're starting to see it all form. But it's Melkor who played, who went and tried to do his own tune. So through the title sequence, we're seeing that the blackness come true. It's like whether that's a representation of Sauron and the show, like with the blackness coming from the cow and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's actually the Discord, right? Melkor trying to introduce his own tune and wreck the song of the Valar. I thought it was a really clever way of kind of showing the importance of music and the way it shapes Middle Earth through this kind of imagery in a way that actually works. Like that, I wouldn't be surprised if to some degree that was somewhat practical mixed with
Right, and
digital.
enhanced with digital, yeah.
But I would
Possibly.
love it if the end of it had the silver text from the promo.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll probably meet you in the middle somewhere. I think it's probably a perfect intro to the show, actually, in that it's visually stunning, but the music is fucking boring.
Oh, the music is boring, which is
and that's the biggest issue.
Which is weird because it's Howard Shore.
Right. And I think that's what maybe Eric was getting at, in that I'm not pumped for it because music has the ability to pump you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what it's kind of lacking. I actually think that the intro to the show should just be the black screen with the silver writing and on we go. And
that's
that
needed,
piece
really,
that you're talking about could be the end credits.
Oh, that would be so good.
Like, I think that's a perfect kind of way of doing it. But anyway, not to go on too much more about that, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that because I know you said you had a different opinion to Eric on it. But so now going on to theories and speculation, kind of going forward about some of the stuff before we come to the end of the episode. So, the Stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Have you any theories on who that is?
I'm still thinking it's Sauron. I really do. I feel like they're still like throwing in loose like, you know, the whether it's I think you were referring to him being Gandalf just because of the way he speaks to the fireflies and his imagery, and like,
and he's the Lord of the Secret Fire, wielder of the flame of Arnor.
No, he's a servant. Servant of the Secret Fire.
Of the Secret Fire. And so when he is surrounded by flames, you're automatically thinking Sauron. And now,
I don't know.
Now what and this is kind of why I was wondering, like, is it a prequel to like the movies or whatever? In the way, if it turns out that he is actually Gandalf, who has come to the land, he doesn't really know who he is yet, or he's not. He knows he has to go somewhere, but he's not fully sure of anything. He doesn't even speak English yet. And even when he did the scary thing, I was like, oh, maybe it is Sauron. And the skies went dark, and everyone was like, sure, that's Gandalf does that. But I was wondering then, is that why they have the Harfoots in it? And they felt the need for the Harfoots to find him. Are they going to try and explain Gandalf's love for the halflings? Is that the first creatures to show him kindness when he came to Middle Earth were the ancestors of halfling, and forevermore he kind of kept an eye out on them, and they give him courage because when he was first found and he was scared alone in Middle Earth, that's who found him. So those are the things, even though, and I know, and the scholars out there are going to be like, the Astari did not come to Middle Earth until the Third Age, and I know that, but also watch the rest of the show. I don't think they give a shit what happens when. I think they're more interested in, though, but wouldn't it be interesting though?
Yeah, I would be disappointed if that is Gandalf.
Right.
Just because I prefer my own idea.
Yeah. And I'm not even saying that I hope it's Gandalf. I'm just saying that the imagery around it and what they're doing is making me think that it's Gandalf.
I think the Blue Wizards, I think they may have arrived in the Second Age. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I thought perhaps maybe it could be, if it's one of the Astari, it could be. But I don't know if they have the rights for that, so I don't know. But The reason I think it's Sauron, apart
Yep.
from just the flaming eye that was around him, basically kind of
Yes, yeah.
hinting at that. When Nori touched the flame and it wasn't hot, and that mirrors obviously what was happening in the north when the elves were saying that there was no heat from the flame because of the evil that's there. It doesn't give off heat.
But also when the ring goes into the fire and then you hold it, don't worry, it's quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that this could be the reason why the Harfoots are introduced, right? There's in Tolkien's work, there's the whole thing of like, there isn't necessarily such thing as chance. Everything happens for a reason, right? Bilbo was meant to find the ring.
Which of course meant you also weren't meant to have it.
So it could actually be that it's the Harfoots kind of willingness to help this man who, if it turns out to be Sauron, will eventually lead to his downfall. Like, so
Right,
it's
right,
the
yeah.
Harfoots are getting involved to some degree, which
Mhm.
would lead the hobbits to playing a role, because it's the kindness of them that would actually lead to the death of the Sauron, even if it is many, many years later.
Yes, yeah.
And also just because he is supposed to be the deceiver, and I think he needs to be able to deceive the audience just as much as he deceives the characters in the show.
100%.
And I just think it'll be a bit weird bringing on, like, when do you introduce Sauron exactly? And should we know, really,
Is it
what
possible?
he's up to? And
I wonder as well, though, like to really deceive the audience, there's that kind of sleight of hand trick, I guess, to planting a twist where you have a red herring. And I'm wondering, is the stranger the red herring? And is it possible?
Definitely. Whoever he is, he's absolutely the red herring.
And is it possible that there is a character amongst the cast already that is Sauron?
Good at you.
Probably not her, but like,
Lisa.
is it possible?
Well, you could maybe make a Halbrand, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just obviously we haven't seen much of him yet.
Yeah,
but the guy needs to have some sort of. He's supposed to be in the guise of an elf, isn't it? When he goes to convince Celebrimbor to forge the rings.
supposedly, yeah.
Now they might not decide that he'll be an elf, but perhaps someone who definitely is out of this world nearly. And that's why I'm kind of leaning towards the stranger, a guy who comes from the sky to bring gifts.
Yes.
Whereas Halbrand just being a dude, it's like, why would we listen to you? I'm actually thinking Halbrand and Theo are possibly could lead to becoming Nazgul.
Possibly, yeah. I've heard other people say that too. I
Because
think
Theo,
that's pretty cool.
It's like, was that orc trying to kill him, or was he trying to grab him? Don't know, but he left his mark on him.
Yeah,
and now he has this blade that kind of just like appears, very reminiscent of
it's
like
very
like a Morgul blade.
Yeah, it's very Nazgul-y, even just the imagery of it.
And they're in what they called Tir Harad, which is made up for the show, but it's in Mordor where they are. That is
Right.
Mordor.
Yeah,
So the land dying around them is
leading to Mordor.
is leading to this dead place where things
Wasteland,
won't grow.
Yeah.
So the people that are there, which they call the Southrons, we know that Southrons end up kind of siding with anyway. So they talk about a return of their king as well.
They do. I love that story as well. I love that the elves have been watching over these people for so many years, and they're punishing the descendants for what their ancestors did.
Yeah, and straight up racist, like.
And that there is characters amongst them that are actually like Bronwyn the healer. She seems like she's going to be a very good character.
Yeah.
But she comes from the sort of lands of the enemy, so to speak. I think that's great area to dive into, because I was always interested in, is like, what if there was like a member of the Haradrim? I know these are somewhat related to that kind of area, right?
Yeah.
I was like, what if there was ever like a story of Middle Earth where there's a member of the Haradrim who does not agree with the war, and like, it's like, what's that like? I think those are some interesting stories to like dive into, like
Yeah.
characters who don't necessarily side with, but are just sort of like stuck living with the enemy. You know what I mean? And like that's a really interesting take.
Yeah, and I think that's a bit strange because when they were first announcing that they were going to have a diverse cast, my excitement was that there was going to be exploring the Southrons and things like that, which is the complexity of they're not bad, they're just caught up in all this. Some
Sure.
of them were bad, others were not, and it would have been one of the Blue Wizards that would have went to try and save them from being on the side of the enemy.
Mhm.
But so it's a little confusing. Now I don't think there's nothing like the way how the race thing is absolutely not a fucking issue with this show, like at all, because
it's not.
it doesn't. They don't like lean into anything. If anyone's worried about that, they
No.
really don't. But it does confuse me why they didn't explore. Like they could have had way more diversity. They actually could have, with the people of Harad.
Yeah, isn't it strange that what
they're
is already
very
perceived to be a very diverse show? I feel like
they're very pale. The people of Harad,
yeah,
which
right.
is fucking strange.
There's maybe some cast members that need to be swapped around.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Just for the authenticity of where in the world they come from, and then trying to match that up with sort of climate and things like that. That's all
I mean,
would say.
they're not so far south that they couldn't be. Like it looks as though some of these people could end up hopping the mountains and joining the side of Gondor and become
For sure.
become them and stuff like that. But it is just a little strange that it's like, you had an opportunity for huge diversity in that area.
Yes,
and exploring the fact that they're not evil. They're really not, and you can't punish them for the ways of their
Right.
ancestors, and it would be a king that would lead them to a downfall. So the evil comes from the corruption of the king who
Not
takes a
the
ring.
individuals. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So those are some of the things where I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's interesting stuff there. You were, I think, 100% right in one of your speculations earlier on from the trailers. Those hands that grabbed Arondir, and obviously we'll find out, but I think you're 100% right. I think that's Ents.
Now I'm not so sure.
You had said that before, only because it was only when I got a proper look at the hands there, and then, like, yeah, at first you see something that looks fucking terrifying. I was like, oh my god, what? It's not an orc. What is that? And seeing the hand marks everywhere. But then it looked like the actual bushes and things moved as well as the hands came out. So I'm like, is it a type of Ent? I think Adam might have been right, and we think he's in danger, and maybe he's not. But they're going to be able to explain to him what's happening to the earth. I feel like that gives an opportunity, like if it is Ents, it gives an opportunity to hear it basically from the earth itself. This is what's happening to me. You need to save me. Like they're a perfect thing to speak on behalf of Middle Earth itself.
Yeah, I hope so. But then it's like, because they did show Ents in the.
They did, yeah.
I was also like, that was so cool.
That was great.
But it could also be, it could actually still be orcs because the way their hands are, they're quite weird. And they seem to be disguising themselves with darkness and things like that.
That's true.
Only because the way in the trailer, it's like we know he gets captured by orcs and he ends up fighting a warg, doesn't he? So does that lead to that? It could. So
possibly.
Not sure now. I think. At first, I was like, I think it could be Ents, but in the way it's placed in the episode now, I'm not 100% on that. But
I get you.
I'm interested to see where that plays out. But the other speculation I have is with the characters Elrond and Galadriel.
Go ahead.
And Elrond says to Galadriel that if the enemy is back, just as you say, I will continue to fight. That will lead to obviously the last alliance warrior Elrond.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says to her pretty much that he's pretty much alluding to that she needs to understand that you need to put down the sword. That her willingness to fight in this way is endangering so many others. That this is a fight that I think will require something other than fighting all the time.
Yeah.
And that the warrior princess kind of vibe that they're going with here, it could lead to a downfall rather than a she's a badass warrior. They've established she is a badass warrior. She can do that.
Yes, yeah.
But the strength in Galadriel is, of course, the sorceress of the woods. And I think that they're kind of dropping some breadcrumbs as to like that could lead to that Galadriel at some point.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could. I personally feel, though, however, that with the way they're setting it up and with the way the characters, the journeys that they're going on, that's what I feel personally could be stronger if it was the other way around. And what I mean by that is, so Galadriel is now adrift in the water with Halbrand. They're about to meet on the boat Isildur or Elendil, right? Because I've seen it in the trailers. Like either Isildur or Elendil were on those boats that pick them up and bring them to Numenor. So great, we're going to get to see Numenor in episode 3. I feel like that should be Elrond, because I feel like Elrond and Isildur need to build a very strong relationship, so that when it comes to the point where Isildur will not destroy the ring, Elrond's difficulty there is that he couldn't kill or stop his friend. And that then years later, and that he's always the one been trying to fight the enemy, and he's kind of given up hope because even his best friend in the end succumbed to its temptation and that kind of. So now with a 5-season show, obviously all the characters might meet up, and that could happen anyway. I'm just saying at the moment with the way the paths are going. And then Galadriel, I feel, should be more tied to the creation of the rings. So I feel like she should be with Celebrimbor and helping with the forgery and everything, and like using her wisdom to talk to people and talk around to getting things done, so that later on when the rings are made and things goes fucking south, she actually is operating on a guilt that I had a part to play in this. And I feel like those would be stronger stories for those particular characters.
I think you certainly would get a lot more outrage.
Would you? Why? Then these versions?
Well, yeah, just particularly, I think Elrond definitely is the guy who needs to go to Durin, because they do actually have a strong friendship.
All right, well, yeah, cool.
That does need to play out. But yes, like you said, there's 5 seasons. I think there's an opportunity to build up friendship and relationships that they don't need to establish any of them too early. I think Galadriel's placement, I think overall everyone is kind of grand where they're at. Galadriel's placement is just the weirdest one right now. It's like,
yeah,
what the hell?
Feels
she's just
the furthest removed.
She's even forced into this situation.
Yeah.
Strange.
But yeah, it's almost like as if they've latched onto that one sequence in the Fellowship where she goes, in place of a Dark Lord, you would have a queen, and in that moment, the images of this armored, and I think she actually even has a little sigil on her chest piece that they seem to have kind of hinted at in her armor. And I'm just wondering, is that literally all they've drawn from, in terms of maybe at one point she was a battle queen, you know? Like it's just that piece of imagery, that maybe at one point maybe she is battle worn, but it's like, but I mean, she doesn't take part in the Last Alliance, so it's like when the seasons eventually get there, is she just taking a backseat, or are they going to write in that she was injured so she couldn't take part in the battle, or has she really put up the sword by then? Will they do that, or will they, because I mean, this is the thing that happens with, like, if she, you know, if they get on so well with the actor, they love seeing what she does, they're really like this version of Galadriel they've written, they're not going to write her taking a backseat. They're going to come up with some other reason that's not going to feel authentic to the version of Galadriel we know. I feel, because it's what happened when Jennifer Lawrence played Mystique, for example. You now start writing the character because of who's playing her rather than because of who the character is.
Yeah.
So I just get a little bit worried about that.
Yeah, there is definitely a worry about like where they're going to take, well, any of the characters really, but but her in particular, yeah. I don't think people realize that her strength is beyond taking up the sword.
Absolutely. It's her wisdom.
They certainly hint at this, but whether they follow through on it now, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
The only thing, when shows like this get really bad reviews, and there's certainly a lot of criticism towards the show. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, everything deserves criticism. But I just hope that the writers or the producers or whatever don't get too hung up on all the criticism and change course completely, because we've seen what happens when a studio decides to do that, and it'll fuck up everything. I think they should definitely take criticism on board and weave it naturally into the show, and kind of go, okay, these are areas that we can kind of improve on.
Yeah.
Maybe lean off that a little bit and introduce this, but don't go, okay, we got to scrap the next 5 seasons and like we need to rewrite or whatever.
Yeah, you should generally stay the course.
Yeah.
And exactly what you're saying, weave in where you can in a natural way some of the criticism. So it's like if it's a case of like, okay, people that really aren't reacting well to this Warrior Galadriel, for example, then it's like, okay, over the course of the next season, she's gonna slowly come out of that. But don't like suddenly the next season she wears a white dress at all times and she doesn't fight anymore.
Yeah, that's
and
just
it's
doesn't
just
work.
poor character arc then at that point.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I think that's fair. I think like if you're going to listen to criticisms, I think it's fair to for any writer, because like not everyone's going to agree on everything anyway.
No.
I think genuinely, even if it means that I wouldn't like the show, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, I think a writer should really only listen to criticism that when they hear it, they agree with it. Do you get me? Because otherwise you're writing for someone else.
Like it's you hear it and you kind of go, oh, actually, yeah. Like
exactly.
It strikes a chord a little bit.
Where you go, that's actually a really good point, and I didn't think of it.
Yeah.
But now that you say that, yes, that is better than what I was planning. So yeah, now I want to work that in. You're after inspiring me with your criticism. Do you get me? I think those are the best forms of criticism to act upon. Because I think anything else is literally just like, if you change it because like, oh, I really want them to like me. That's the wrong reason to do something. That's what I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, now we'd love to hear from all of you guys. We won't be jumping back into the Rings of Power until we've seen the whole season, and then we'll do a full spoiler discussion on like the whole show. And there might be so much in that'll need to be a 2-parter. We don't know yet, but we'll see. We'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about the Rings of Power so far? And what are your speculations going forward? Who do you think the stranger is? There seems to be no particularly obvious right answer right now, because I think they've put enough little hints in there that it could go one way or the other. Is he a villain or is he a hero? We don't know yet. He genuinely...
It's Tom Bombadil.
Imagine. Let us know your theories. So if you're watching this on YouTube, jump down in the comments to share your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this discussion, why not give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell for all future content, including when we do the full series spoiler discussion. And if you guys listen to this on audio platforms, then you can also touch base on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Brothers Take, again, to give your take so far on the Rings of Power. Thank you very much for checking this episode out, guys. We'll be back to talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.